Hi, everybody. We're just going to give everyone a second to get into the meeting. Sorry, we're running just a moment late, but hopefully looks like everyone's being added pretty easily. My name's Bailey Berlanti, VP of Business Development here at ServeVita. Michael always tells me I forget to introduce myself. So we'll just take one more second and then we'll get going. Okay. All right, like I said, I'm Bailey Berlanti, VP of Business Development here at ServeVita, which is so one of the things I get to work on is these webinars. We're in the middle of our summer 2025 webinars that have focused on the video help files. So being able to bring the help files in Central Command to life through the voice of Michael Guiette, the screen sharing on the screen. So today we're going to be following suit with that and talking about GDS data interfaces. So everything around bringing transactions into Central Command and how to be getting the most out of that and bringing in good quality data from GDS or other booking sources. We're going to be focusing on our presentation and then we will follow everything up with a Q&A. So again, be writing those questions into the chat box or into the Q&A box in the Teams webinar so that we can be able to get to those at the end of the presentation. Just as a few housekeeping announcements, this webinar is being recorded. We are making sure that we load all of these webinars, this one, in addition to all the ones that we've done previously over the past year, into the YouTube page for ServeVita. So we'll publish that post event. It normally takes a moment for the recording to render with all of the good information that we've gleaned. So just give us a moment on that post event, but we'll make sure on sending that out and so that you and your colleagues can have a copy of these webinars to review as it comes to be relevant for you. All attendees are muted, your cameras are off, so you do not have to worry about interrupting anything. And then again, use the Q&A tab or the chat box to ask any questions. I think there's even an ability to be anonymous if you would prefer that. And then just as far as upcoming webinars, we're down to our last one in this summer series. So we'll work on putting together our fall schedule for August, September, and October over the next month. But we've got one more that's going to focus on web APIs. We've got some really exciting plans for that one. So be sure to register if you haven't already. That will be July 17th. Again, same time, same place. So with that said, I'm going to pass it over to Michael Guiette to be able to cover today's topic, GDS data interface, the video help file. Michael, over to you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am Michael Guiette, Director of Product Management for ServeVita. I'm here today to first remind you that it's only 187 days until Christmas Eve, but then we are going to talk about the upgraded modules, the upgraded environment for Central Command. And let me share my screen out momentarily. So we're going to be, again, first talking about the web client. What we've been doing recently over the last probably year is improving the way the web client works. This is going to allow customers to reduce their reliance on different internal servers and hardware or virtual hardware so that we can put more functionality in the hands of the people who need it without having to manage individual access through remote desktop presentation or remote desktop protocol functionality. So when we look at our topic for today, we're going to be focusing on the version of Milestone 7.76.1. Recently, you probably received notification that Milestone 7.77 is available. At the end of this presentation, I will go through a little bit of the release notes there to talk about some of the functionality that was released earlier this month so that you're aware of that. And as you're planning your upgrade, if there's some new functionality in the 7.7, you may want to consider going directly to that version. So in our discussion today, we're going to go through what we've seen and heard from customers who've been upgrading to the latest release of Central Command, some of the challenges that they go through, those relating to the necessary permissions to be able to access the functionality that they need. We're going to look at corrections in the interface transactions. We're going to talk about how the new functionality works and looking at that. We're going to look at the setup of fixed registers, and I'm going to do this both in the web and the desktop. The reason why is a lot of customers who are using the desktop application, when they upgrade, they do find that some of the new screens don't allow them the similar to functionality to the old screen. So we'll show it in the web, and then we'll talk about it in the desktop as well. We're also going to look at creation of validation rules because there's some new functionality there, and then an overview of the data mapping module. So with that, let me breathe. Okay, so with that, what we're going to do is when we're looking at Central Command in the web, underneath the Central Command module, the menu structure looks a little different. The reason why is because the web screen allows us to utilize that middle section of the screen that the desktop does not. It allows us to have 3 different columns depending on the resolution of your screen. And based on the column, so when we're doing training, I'll say column 1, section 3, which would be interface. So it allows us to be able to see all of the modules that are within Central Command on the screen at the same time. See the functionality here. Now, that brings me to the challenge of when you upgrade. When you upgrade, you're going to go into the system administration, you're going to go into access control, and we're going to use menu access first. When we open the menu access in Central Command, you're going to go in and you will see different things. Well, and again, this is a little different in the web than it is in the desktop. And I'll flip over there in just a second. And what we find is that when people upgrade, they forget to come in and make sure that the users have access to the new functionality. Meaning that if I go into the transaction, the ticket vendor screen, and I look at the tabs, okay, underneath the tabs here, these tabs may have different functionality that's here, also the tools. The tools may have different functionality that your people need to have access to. If I go into the invoice items, for example, it allows me, the screen then allows me to go in and look at and set different functionality based on the tools, being able to add a new invoice item or to link a segment to an invoice item. So the new screens provide us additional functionality. When people are upgrading, they forget to come in here and enable users who are using Central Command to be able to see those new screens, to use that new functionality. So when we go in and they ask us a question about it and they say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't working for me the way you said it would, we go back in and we work through their permissions and we give them, that's where we run into or see the updates that are being made. Now, another thing that I do want to point out is in Central Command, when you open a screen, so let's talk about interface, right? We know we have the parsers sitting up on the application server. They feed messages into Central Command. The data load picks those messages up, and based on the data validation and data mapping rules, we may find that transactions either hit the view warning message, view error message, view fatal messages screen. Now, when you get this this new screen out of the box, the date from will be exactly the same as the date to. One of the things that we need to be able to do is determine how far back into the past do we want to be able to show all of the transactions. If I clear this date and I load this screen, it's going to take a second here. This is going to show me the transactions that have been stopped in error. If I scroll down to the bottom of this screen, you can see I'm scrolling along way here. Okay, I get down to 500 rows, but I've got two different tabs of this. So literally, if I go down to my second tab here, I've got 731 errors. Now, obviously, 500 rows 500 rows scrolling could be a challenge if I'm looking for something. So what you can do here is it'll come in set as the default, and the default has 15 rows. The problem with the default only being 15 rows, now I've got a whole 49 pages of error messages at 15 rows each. So the user does have that ability to set how many rows do they want to display on each one of these tabs. The other thing on this screen is now we have a zoom button. The zoom button gives us our ability to zoom into this transaction and see the transaction. Now, I'm going to point out something here that's a little different than we've been able to do in the past. In CentralCommand, we've had a parameter in there for years that says stop duplicate tickets, because we know that sometimes agents will go in and they will issue a new invoice without removing old accounting lines. If they do that and you have the dupe ticket parameter turned on, it allows us to set it as an error message, and it allows us to determine how many days in the past do we want to look for that duplicate ticket. If we find a duplicate ticket that was issued 6 months ago in the system, and you go to the invoice items, this screen, if I had the old ticket and the new ticket here at the same time, it will allow me to select the old ticket because I'm stopped as an error, okay? It's not in the system yet. It will allow me to tag that old ticket and delete it from the transaction. Then I can revalidate it, let it go into the system. By removing the old ticket, I'm getting rid of that duplicate ticket that gave me the error in the first place. So this is some new functionality. Well, new functionality. It's been there for a while, but the changes to this screen make it a lot better. This new transaction screen looks a lot more like the old transaction screen, and it allows you to work with it without a lot of training, okay? So the other thing I want to point out in the view error messages screen, we talked about this date, so if I click I'm going to close this again, and I'm going to view error messages again. What you'll see here is my dates here at the top right now don't match. The reason why they don't match is I went in and said, set the default to be 7 days before today. So up here at the top, where you see the wrench on any screen within CentralCommand, within Unit 4 Business World, to be honest with you, when you see that screen here, you can click on that, and that will go into the Windows options screen. It's going to give you a default window option. Now I can go into the main view. I'm going to go into selection criteria. I'm going to say date between In this date between field, you can see I've got a little green check mark there. What that means is I've set a default date to be today minus 7 days. When I put in today minus 7 days, I can then say apply and save this. The next time I open that screen, my default date range is going to show me the last 7 days of interface errors being displayed. Okay. Now, the other thing I do want to point out is if I wanted that date from field to be blank, what I would do is I would put in 01-01-1900. The reason why I'm putting in this date is because in the background, SQL Server recognizes January 1st, 1900 as a blank field. So a blank date field. So that's why you have the ability to blank it out, but you can't just say, take this out. You can't just do this and set the default value as blank here. You do, because it is a date field, you have to put in January 1st, 1900, so the SQL Server recognizes it as a blank date field. Once you've updated your default Windows option, then you have to go into Windows option distribution. When you open this screen, slowly, when you open this screen, this is where you're going to say what role, what company are you going to give this Windows option to? Okay, so you can't just change the default value on the screen. You then have to go apply this to a role so the people who are logging in with that role get those default options that you set up. Okay, so this works very similar, and I do want to point out this. If I just close this screen, it takes me back to the main menu. It doesn't take me back to my view error messages screen. These breadcrumbs at the top of your window allow you to go back to the previous level. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So these are the kinds of things that when we do the upgrade, we want to look at what type of permissions are we setting up? What are we doing with regards to, configurations and making sure that we apply those configurations to the users that we will go in and have people logging in. Other tools, both in the desktop application and in the web. If I take this out and I come down here to my database column and I put in cust ID. Now, I don't know if you have a set way that when you have customers that are created, who actually creates customer numbers. But I want to point out a couple of tools on this screen that have been here for a while. The first is create new customer. What this will do is it will open up the screen that shows me from the PNRs, the customer ID that's in error. So I'm going to pull up just this one. And I'm going to load that or filter on that, for example. Okay, so right now I have a whole bunch of transactions that have this same customer number on it. You can see that I've got different passenger names on those PNRs, but in address 1, I can see they all kind of go to the same customer. So what I could do is tag all of these rows at one time. At the bottom of the screen then, if I pick one of these dates, whichever one I highlight is the date that I'm going to, is the address that I'm going to use when I create this customer master file. So down here at the bottom, I've got a tool that says create customer and update correction. So what it would do when I click on this, it will create a new customer and launch the customer master file on this screen. It will use this address as the general address in that customer master file. And all of these transactions that I have selected, it will go and correct the error messages so that those transactions can then be processed into the system. This tool, both the create new customer and create new vendor, work the same way. So it does allow you to simplify. If you got independent consultants where they create their own customer number, it does help you to be able to create new customers on the fly in CentralCommand in the Unit 4 business world based on the information that that agent is putting into the P&R. Okay, so that's a couple of ways we can do some mass corrections of errors. The other way is on this screen. If I look at, let's say that I want to go in here and I want to choose a number of transactions, but those transactions, so if let's say that I've got CEBR is my customer ID, right? Let's say I'm going to use the same, let's say it's not this customer number we're going to use, but I want to update all of these customer numbers with the proper correction. Instead of doing them one at a time, again, I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to come over to more actions, and I'm going to say update using a single value. Updating using a single value would allow me to put the correction value into this field, and for every row that I have selected, it will put that value into the correction column so that I can correct them all and save them at one time. So we put things into the interface error screen that allows you to find information more quickly, to update information more quickly, and to be able to make those corrections more quickly. Okay? Another thing I want to point out is something that we've been asked for a while. I'm going to come down here to in my interface folder. I'm going to go into fixed registers, and I'm going to go to validation rules. And again, so far everything I'm showing you is available both in the desktop client and in the web. Okay? So if I go into validation rules and I say, okay, I want to do a new validation rule. And you guys know me, I can't talk and type at the same time, so I apologize for that. But one of the features that has been asked for a long time, for a running time, is the ability to make corrections based on criteria that we find that we know is going to be incorrect, okay? In this severity level, we've always had error and warning. These two, error and warning, have been the two defaults that we've been able to set up. In the validation rule, when we have an error, it stops that transaction. If we have a warning, it lets the transaction flow all the way into the database, but it'll flag it so the reporting team can go in after the fact, before reports go out at the end of the month, find the warning messages and make any corrections that they need. The new one is called default. Default is interesting in that we can look at the criteria, the conditions that we're setting up here on this first condition tab, and then we can have the system update a value into the value field that we have set up as that error message. Let me give you an example. If I come into conditions, I'm going to make a really simple one. I'm going to say add. Actually, I'm going to clear this again because I already did the wrong thing. So if I come down to validation rules, and I'm going to say update hotel rate code. Okay, just as a quick example, I'm going to make this default. I'm going to look at type. This is going to be transactions coming through, not transactions. So I can't make an update to an adjustment. I can only do transactions. Here, invoice or itinerary. Now, this question has come up a couple of times for me. This invoice and itinerary has nothing to do with how we get the information out of the GDS. This is not a DIN or a DIT situation, an itinerary only or an invoiced transaction. This is saying, am I looking at the invoice items within CentralCommand, the accounting line data, or am I looking at itinerary data? So that's what that means, okay? Down here, I'm going to say add. Table is going to be hotel, segment. This is going to be the corporate rate code. Is going to be empty. If it's empty, then what I want to put in, I'm going to say add, and it's going to go into the hotel segment table, corporate rate code, and I'm going to put in the value of SERV for my ServeVita corporate rate code, right? So when I add that validation rule and I click save, now anytime a transaction with a hotel segment comes into CentralCommand, CentralCommand is going to look at that hotel segment. It's going to look at the corporate rate code. And if it is empty, it's going to replace it with SERV, which is my corporate company rate code, because I know I want everybody using our corporate negotiated rates as often as possible. So and again, this is a very quick example of what it is for. Is so that we can find basic criteria, the conditions. You can have one row here, you can have multiple conditions, right? The value that we're updating it with. We can say update it with information from a flexi field group, from a linked relation, from a table in the system. So we can say if this condition exists for this customer, and we know that their UDID 15 has to have a value in it, we can tell it to put that value into the remark field so that it gets updated so that our reporting can be correct and it can be put out there automatically. Again, it can get complicated. What does Spider-Man say? With great power comes great responsibility. So be careful about doing automatic updates based on the rules. You want to test this in your test environment. You want to be able to set it up based on specific criteria where you know you've had issues before and it takes a lot of time to correct them. Okay, so the final thing we're going to talk a little bit about here is data mapping. We haven't talked about data mapping in a long time. So under data mapping, we have some different tools that are set up here. And again, I'm not talking about any different tools in validation rules in the desktop versus the web. They're both exactly the same. Same thing with data mapping. What's in the web is in the desktop as well, okay? So one of the concepts that we want to talk about, and how, I've been working with CentralCommand now for 24 something years, and the challenge that we've had with data mapping is that agencies will create data mapping based on the UDIDs that the agent is entering into a PNR. And what we've seen is a challenge where customers run out of fields on the UDID table And so we've had to go from, I think we started with 60, then we went to 90, now we're at 200 fields on the data mapping table, the UDID mapping table. And so, somebody's going to come up and say, we need more. Well, let's talk about the concept here. Because the first thing I would say is, if we evaluate the type of information that agents are putting into their UDIDs, whether they're independent consultants, whether they're corporate agents or leisure agents, everybody is putting data into those remarks for a reason. And what we want to do is we want to look at the reasons behind why agents put data into UDIDs. And those reasons start to become clear when we start looking at that data. We might put things in there: lowest logical fare, full coach fare, full base fare, total base fare. We might put a city code in there or an email address. We may use a cost center number, department code, trip purpose. So the reason behind why we're putting the data into the remark in the first place allows us to start looking at two things. One, how do we standardize getting the data out of the remark into a reportable field? But then on the output side of that, it allows us to say, okay, if we're going to use this mapped data in reports, we want to be able to create reports that says, if I'm going to pull a cost center number into a report, doesn't matter which UDID the agent is using on the front end side, we want to be able to have that data going into the cost center number field so that when the reporting gets created, we're looking at a cost center report. We want to go and grab the cost center field that we're mapping every cost center to. Okay, so the concept here is, as we standardize the types of data that we're collecting and we're creating reports that use those standardized types of information, then we can create our data mapping so that if we have an independent consultant that comes to us and say, hey, I've got a new customer called ServeVita, and they have 10 UDIDs, and their UDIDs start with 30 and go to 40, okay? If I have that set up, then when I go into my data mapping set, instead of going in and saying, okay, I need to create a new UDID mapping to a new UDID element, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, okay, pull up my data mapping set for U30. Okay, I don't have one here. Let me find one real quick. So I'm going to use cost center. Let me do cost center real quick. UDID element. Let me do the UDID element here. Cost center. Oh, I'm highlighting on it, right? So it's here, okay? It's my varchar 2 field. Let's see here. Why is it doing this for me? Okay. So what it allows me to do, let's say that this agent uses UDID 23 because they don't have UDID 30 set up there. So when they use, I mean, if I don't have, let's just refresh this. U30. What? So what did I do here? This is permissions. So I've set it up so that it doesn't like me today. So I apologize for this. If I'm using U1 to do email address for this customer, okay? U1 is going to be setting up here. And if I use U1, I have a customer or all customers down here that are going to put the email address into the varchar 16 field. But if I use U1 for cost center number, for example, okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say U1, and this is going to be my customer number, 11,000 cost center. Okay. Then I'm going to come down to add the criteria here, and I'm going to say cust ID. Cust ID. It's going to be like 11,000. 11,000. And now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say the table is going to be my UDID table, and it's going to be cost center. Tab off of that. It's going to be sequence 1. It's nothing going to be behind it. So now what this is going to do is if I use UDID 1, okay, and if I had cost center number access to it, it would be so I'm going to use UDID 1. It's going to map for this customer. It's going to map the UDID 1 for this customer to this field. So if I'm using the same UDID for multiple agents, they have different values that they're putting into UDID 1 for a whole bunch of different customers. Instead of trying to figure out and map cost center number from multiple UDIDs into multiple varchar fields that I have to then go and create multiple reports for it, what I want to do is say, if the agent's using UDID 1, I want to map their UDID 1 to the appropriate data field where I have that data collected, so that I can use UDID 1 for multiple things. If I go in and I say add, and I have my 11,002, and this is going to be their email, or if this is going to be their project code. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down. I'm going to say cust ID. It's going to be like 11,002. And now when I go into my mapping, I'm going to say UDID, got a table, and I'm going to say project. It's not giving me project code. So I've set it up so I don't have access to everything I need here. So it allows me, I'm going to use approval code. So this isn't project code. This is going to be approval code. So what I can do here then is, because the agents might use UDID 1 for specific customers, different types of data, instead of me having to go figure out what each agent uses for each customer and their UDIDs, what I want to be able to do is take those UDIDs that they're using and map them into predefined data fields, so that the reporting team, if they're going to get an approval code and they have a customer, or we're creating a report that has approval code on it, doesn't matter what the agent UDID is using, we're always going to map what they've defined from their customer as approval code we're going to map it into the approval code field. Okay, we're going to map the approver or the manager into a specific field. It allows us then to standardize and reduce the number of fields. Go back to the UDIT elements here. It allows me to go down and reduce the number of fields that we're mapping the data to in the database to allow us to simplify how do we get the data out of the system when we start reporting on it. Yes, I understand this could be complicated to begin with. I understand that we might have a challenge because we've done something one way forever, okay? But remember, if we set it up this way, then what we can do is we can use the tools within CentralCommand to go back and remap data to make sure that we're mapping it to those reportable fields to help us simplify the reporting on the output side. In the long run, this will make your business more efficient. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for ways to help you become more efficient. Now, finally, and I've got 3 minutes and I'm going to do this in 3 minutes, okay? If I come into the desktop application, one of the things I do want to point out is if you go into the transaction inquiry and you pick a date, sorry, my dog sees a bunny out the window in the front of the house. He's going crazy. If I go into this transaction inquiry and I double click on this row. Now in my demo environment, if I double click on this row, I know it's going to say, you're not authorized to do that. Okay, the reason why I did that, the reason why I turned that off is because in the version milestone 776, that would take me to the old travel ticket vendor screen. And I didn't want that to happen. I want people using the new functionality. So what I did is I put in a link that says, okay, I highlight the transaction number here, and I click on ticket vendor screen up there in the toolbar, and now it takes me to this new ticket vendor screen. Okay, so one of the things that is coming, or not coming, it's out in version milestone 7.77 is now you can have that link. So when you double click on this row, it will take you to that new screen. The other thing that we've seen is that when this ticket screen opens, the first time you open it in the morning, it takes a little while. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background here, okay? The other thing was in the older versions before 7.6, it was taking a long time because this was a type ahead field. And so the queries behind this screen that would go out and look for data before you opened it was taking a long time. The Unit 4 team has been great about updating this so it's much faster because it allows us to use this. Instead of it being a type ahead, it's just a text box now. So you type in your P&R locator, or you type in your transaction number, and it pulls that transaction up. If you double click on that row in the new 7.7 version, it'll take you to the new transaction screen. So those I did want to point out that, some people who have been upgrading and they've been looking at, are we going to use the new screen or not use the new screen? I recommend using the new screen because there's so much better functionality in it, and the way that you have access to the information in it. With that, it's 11:15, and I wanted to ask Bailey, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, so feel free to add questions into the chat or the Q&A box. We'll start off with this one. We were talking about Windows options at the beginning of the webinar, and in the date setting, there was a $sign in front of today, and we were just wondering if there's a reason for that.
Yes, because Central Command or Unit 4 Business World has a list of macros in it. And what they have done is there is a published list of macros that you can use, and one of those is $today. If I use $today, it will pull up today's date. Okay, so that will always open that screen with $today would be today's date. $today, open parentheses, -7, close parentheses, is going to give you a date range from 7 days ago to today. So, very good question. Thank you. Next.
Currently thrown out. So anyone that has them, speak now. Don't forever hold your peace. But while we're waiting for maybe another question to pop up, when we were at the Zoom button on that error messages screen and zoomed into the transaction screen,
Yes.
I know we've got probably a few different versions represented, and I know we've got our new ticket vendor screen and our older ticket vendor screen. What is that Zoom button set to go to? If you're on maybe an older version.
Right. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the system parameter, and you're going to search for *zoom. Michael can't type, sorry. Asterisk, right? So if I have this parameter, XB zoom to TXB021, if that is turned on, it will zoom to the new screen. If it's turned off, it will zoom to the old screen. So make sure that you do want to turn that on when you upgrade to 7.5 or 7.6. If you're in those two versions or above, go ahead and turn that on because you're going to get the most benefit out of that new transaction screen.
All right. I don't have any other questions right now. So you just must have explained it so perfectly.
See, I can't believe that. Come on, guys. I know you have questions.
We're going to get emails later.
So when I turned a minute ago, when I was in here, I did not have this Zoom button. Okay. So now when I turn that parameter on, now I click on the Zoom button and it takes me to that new ticket. Okay. Notice that this error, duplicate ticket number found. I want to show you this here. So again, back to my system parameters travel, and I'm going to go to let me go in here. Asterisk, dupe, asterisk. Okay, so this is not like other validation rules, okay? This system parameter, instead, when you look at a validation rule that we've set up in the system, that validation rule looks at the conditions of the transaction coming into the system only. It doesn't go out and validate against other things unless we're validating on a customer list or a supplier list or something like that. This system parameter says, I want you to look at the database, look at the document table and say, is that ticket number already in the document table? And I want you to search back 150 days from today. And if it's there, I want you to stop that transaction as an error message. If it's older than that, if that original ticket is older than 150 days, it won't stop it. If it's newer than 150 days in the TTD doc table, it will stop it. It's going to stop it with an error message that says duplicate ticket number found. We have one of two ways that we can correct this. Like I said, if I go in here and that duplicate ticket number is here, but see what they did here, that they sent a service fee through a second time, right? So if I take this service fee and I tag it and say delete it, okay, see, it's no longer a duplicate ticket number. So the screen that you're looking on, as soon as I do something in this screen, it may, when it goes to update the database, it's going to look at this information and say, does anything else apply to it? So this screen has a lot more functionality than the old XB21 ticket vendor screen. So this new screen, what the Unifor team has done has been brilliant. They've gone in and they put things into the screen to help us so we don't have to try and save, and then it's going to come back and say, oh, you got another error. Oh, you got another error. Oh, you've got another error. As soon as I tab off of something, if it's a validation field, it's going to tell me you can't do that. So it's really important for us to get to using the new screens as quickly as possible. All right?
Okay. And then, again, just one more question. So we talked about validation rules, and I know you showed where you can create new ones and set it to error or warning messages and the difference between an error versus a warning message. Are you able to change the status of an error warning message for one of the pre-built validation rules that are
Not
in the
Not
system?
at this time. You would disable that one and you can recreate it. But let me look at something here. So if I go back into fixed registers and I go into data mapping, right? And I go to, oh, sorry, not data mapping. Let me go into validation rules.
Because there's
Okay.
20 something that come already in the system, and then you can obviously
About
build your own, like we talked
26.
about.
Yeah, about
26.
26, right? So these first 26 rows are the standard that come with the system, right? Anything after that, like if I come down here and I go into my validation rule number 102, for example, okay? If I tab into that, see, I don't have the ability to change anything up here. I can't make it a warning message versus a default. I can't change it there, right?
Okay.
So no, what you would have to do is you would have to, well, I take that back. You can come in here, you can say copy it, right? When I copy that, now I have that ability to change it. And then when I saved it, I would then go in and deactivate my old one. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Good. Thanks. Good questions.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have, at least for now. So just want to say again, thank you to Michael for going through this. I think it was really helpful to see all of the ins and outs of what it takes to bring these transactions in and bring them in a way that's going to be usable for the rest of your processes. We obviously don't want the whole garbage in, garbage out mentality. So being able to use the validation rules, use the data mapping, and be able to set up the screens to use the system better is always really helpful to learn. So thank you for that, Michael, and thank you everybody for being here. Again, just a reminder, our next webinar is July 17th, and it's going to be covering web APIs and how to integrate CentralCommand to be able to pass off some of this great data that you would have brought in into other applications and solutions that you might be using for other processes. So come and stay tuned for that. And then again, be on the watch out for the recording. We'll make sure that everybody has an ability to rewatch, go back, share with other people at your organization how to be making these Windows changes or setting up these validation rules yourself. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.